Welcome, G. Let's start. So today I am going to discuss on Java exception. So in these exceptions, whenever any method throw exception, so at that time you look on your output, you are getting the complete stack trace from where these exception throw. So it would be good, but sometime whenever we are working on the production, these exceptions are generated by the multiple places, and your stack trace is the huge number that will consume lots of memory. So sometime due to the performance uh, reason, sometime I don't want uh, this stack trace, complete stack trace. I want the only specific message what is the exception or error occur. So in this case we have to learn today how we can disable the stack trace, or how can I enable the stack trace, or even you can say how suppress the exception. So these are the things we have to discuss. uh, but by default, whenever you are not doing anything specific, by default all the Java exception, if thrown, by default they are printing your stack trace. So sometime you want manually, I don't want to get the stack trace, then you have to do manually, we have to inform JVM, yeah, I don't want to stack trace. So I'll do this functionality. Let's jump to the code. So first let's write a code like method. Let's write some method like void test1 method, or let's you can say 2 3 methods are invoked. Let's key 3 method like 2 and 3. So let's say this invoke a test2 method, this invoke test3 method, right? So now let's here I have to write generate some exception. Let's key try and catch exception e, and just want to throw e. Okay, here let's 10 divide by 0. Let's one an integer value. So surely this method throw exception divide by 0. And now let's we can invoke this method from sample dot new. This is sample object, and simply invoke the method. Let's key I invoke method 1. So here your method 1 invoke, then method 2 invoke, then method 3 invoke, and finally your method 3 invoke throw some exception. If you run this code, so let's write here try, and inside this method you move and say catch exception. Here say let's e dot print stack trace. This is the method that printing stack trace. So by default, if any exception throw, you are getting the stack trace. So let's run it, and we notice that we are getting a print stack. So question is that how? So now you're getting this stack trace. That means your first your main method invoke, then your test1 method invoke, then test2 method invoke, then test3 method invoke, and they throw the exception. So this stack trace which are generated by your compiler. So whenever sometime you want this method, surely I want this method divide by 0 exception. But in the case of bigger application, and your application is very performance driven, then this stack trace is taking some memory consumption. So we can avoid. So how, let's think how we can avoid this. I don't want this stack trace. I will do So is there any specific options? So first things, we have to write my own, let's custom class. Let's write my own exception, like suppressible exception. separable कह सकते हैं stack trace, stack trace exception, and extend your exception class. Okay, so here what we have to do currently, if you notice here, you can throw like your exception as well as. So here generally say write a constructor, and whatever the you are getting message, so like you can say instead of this you can just generate your exception. So your this is the cause, and if you notice here you can generate my own exception, new suppressible exception, and whatever the error you are passed us here. So you notice कि whenever you are throwing exception, your method must be throw like exception, throws exceptions, throws exceptions, throws exceptions, and finally the from where we are calling you are getting method. If you run, still our program run and you are getting the print stack trace. There is no any kind of difference. But here instead of using the Java exception class, I using the my own exception class. Now you are still getting the stack trace. So here we have a options ki how we can suppressible exception rename. Okay, so what is exception. So in this class exception class, if you look this class that is the provided the java.lang package, this class given another constructor where we have options. This is the constructor they have given. Okay, this constructor have options. You can have options, you can enable suppression, or you have also writable stack trace. If you pass the writable stack trace true or false, if you pass true, that means they are writing stack trace. If you are passing false, they are not writing stack trace. So I am going to use this constructor exception. So this notice this is the protected class. So this exception, this constructor you can use only in the our subclass. So due to that, I am written my suppressible stack trace extend with the subclass, so that I can invoke the super constructor. So here you can say whatever the message I want, whatever the message you want, you can pass your dot message, and your cause just say null. I don't want to stack trace, and just pass your disable and pass a writable. Say I don't want to write. So this is the parameter where you set write stack trace is the false. That means you are trying to say, hey JVM, don't write stack trace. So this is the change. Now you notice you run this code, you are get the output like this. So you are noticing whenever you run, you are not getting any kind of a stack trace. If you set it's a true, then if you run again, you notice you are getting the stack trace. So this exception class have another constructor that is the protected, and you have to now notice you have getting the your stack trace. So this variable help of you to control your printing stack trace, and you are getting the complete message. So please be note that in this cause you have to in your first you write your own class constructor, and inside your constructor you have to invoke the super class constructor, that is the protected constructor. This is take a 4 parameter: your message, what the message you want to print, your object, throwable object, here you say pass null, and here you can pass enable suppression or writable stack trace. Here I say writable stack trace false, that is don't write stack trace. Writable stack trace true means they are by default, they are true means by default always you are getting the stack trace. So this exception class have a protected constructor, that is the help us to control this stack trace option. So whenever in your application, anytimes you want, sometime you want stack trace or sometime you don't want stack trace. When you want stack trace, just don't do anything. But when you want, I don't want to print stack trace, then you have to override the invoke this abstract protected constructor that have options. So hope this informations through way, because this is the very help in the case of your application is big and there are lots of exception throwing in your application, and at that time multiple stack tests, multiple stacks is printing going to the log file. No, that will take your memory, that will take your processing time. If sometime due to the application performance I want to avoid print stack trace, so in this way you can avoid your printing stack trace. So now even I invoke the print stack trace here, but I am not getting any stack trace because I am disabled here. Say just false, don't want to write the print stack trace. So these are the basic you can say API. That API under come you can say like java.lang exception class. You can use this simple protected constructor, you can say your exception, invoke the if this is a protected, that means inside your subclass you write your subclass extend from exception and write the super and invoke this your message, your throwable clause, and enable suppression, and even the writable stack trace. So this parameter is controlling your writing true or false. In the case of true, that means you are writing stack trace. In the case of false, that means you are not writing stack trace. So hope this information is helpful. Sometime in our application due to the some performance issue, I have to disable stack trace in some module of my application. So I just use this trick provided by the Java itself. Just use the public protected constructor of exception class and just pass the parameter true or false, enable suppression, disable suppression, or enable write stack trace or disable write stack trace. So hope this information is like helpful for you. Again I'm say thank you for watching this video.